All right, let's dive into one of the most powerful, most fundamental promises in the entire Indian Constitution, the right to equality. Now, it's a concept we all kind of think we get, right? But its real power, and believe me, its complexity, is all tucked away in the details.
So, let's start with the big question. What does it really mean to be equal under the law? Because, we all have a general idea. But as we're about to find out, the real answer is this fascinating mix of hard and fast rules and some very, very deliberate exceptions.
Okay, so first up, let's explore the core principle, Article 14. This is the absolute foundation. And what's so cool about it is that it gives us not just one, but two different angles on what legal equality is all about. And there it is, the core promise itself. Now, the first thing you've got to notice is that incredibly powerful word, person. This right isn't just for Indian citizens. Nope, it applies to absolutely everyone within the country's borders. That makes it a truly universal guarantee.
So, how do we unpack that one sentence? Well, it's actually built on two powerful pillars. On one side, you've got equality before law, which is a British concept. The best way to think about it is like the starting line of a race. Absolutely no one gets a head start. No special privileges. Everyone, whether you're a farmer or a CEO, is subject to the very same law. Then, on the other side, there's the equal protection of laws, which comes from the American system. This is all about fairness during the race. It means the law has to treat people in similar situations the same way. So it's not just that everyone starts at the same line, it's that everyone is judged by the same rules while they're running. It's a 1-2 punch for fairness.
And all of this really boils down to one bedrock principle, the rule of law. A jurist named A.V. Dicey laid it out beautifully. It means, first, you can't be punished just because someone feels like it, only for breaking an actual established law. Second, everyone is equally subject to those laws. And third, and this is a big one, it sees the Constitution as a result of our individual rights, not the thing that grants them to us. Our rights come first.
Okay, but here's where things get really interesting. No rule is completely absolute, right? So now we have to talk about the exceptions. The moments where the rules of equality are deliberately bent. And not to break the system, but actually to make it work properly. So you might be thinking, wait a minute, if no one is above the law, what's with all these immunities? Well, it's not about giving people special treatment, it's all about function. The president and governors, they're shielded so they can do their jobs without being buried in endless, politically motivated lawsuits. Members of parliament and state legislatures get immunity for what they say and how they vote inside the House, which allows for open, fearless debate. And foreign diplomats in the UN, they're protected by international agreements so that global diplomacy can actually happen. So here's the key takeaway. These exceptions, they aren't loopholes, not at all. They are a carefully designed, totally integral part of the system, put there to make sure the gears of government and international relations can turn smoothly.
All right, let's zoom in a bit. We're moving from the general idea of equality to something much more specific, Article 15. This one is all about tackling discrimination, but it does it with a very clear purpose.
Here's the first clause of Article 15, and I want you to focus on one tiny but incredibly powerful word, only. The state can't discriminate only on these grounds. That one little word is the key that unlocks everything else we're about to talk about. It opens the door for all the purposeful exceptions.
And here are those exceptions in action. See, they aren't about chipping away at equality, they're about making it real. The state gets the green light to make special provisions for women and children. It can take active steps to help socially and educationally backward classes. And more recently, it can even set aside reservations for the economically weaker sections. This is where we move from just equality on paper to equality in real life. It's this recognition that sometimes to get to a truly equal outcome, you have to treat people differently.
Now, this whole idea of purposeful exceptions doesn't stop there. It carries right over into one of the most important parts of life, getting a job. Let's look at Article 16, which applies the principle of equality directly to public employment.
The promise here is crystal clear. Every citizen gets an equal shot at government jobs. And look at the list of things you can't be discriminated against for. It's mostly the same as Article 15, but notice it adds dissent and residence to the list. That just widens the net of protection even further.
And you guessed it, just like Article 15, we have some exceptions here too. And again, the goal isn't to discriminate, but to make sure we have fair representation. So Parliament can say you need to live in a certain area for some local jobs. The state can create reservations for communities that aren't well represented in public service. Religious institutions can require staff to be of a certain faith. And yes, there's that 10% reservation for economically weaker sections again. The big idea is to strike a balance between individual merit and building a public service that actually looks like the country it serves.
All right, for our final section, we're looking at two really powerful articles. These aren't just about stopping inequality from happening in the future. They're about actively tearing down the old unfair hierarchies from the past.
I mean, look at that. It just doesn't get more direct or more powerful than Article 17. 3 simple words. But what's really fascinating from a legal standpoint is that the Constitution never actually defines untouchability. And that wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate choice to give courts the maximum power to interpret it broadly and fight that social evil wherever it pops up.
And this brings us to the final act of leveling the playing field. Article 18, the abolition of titles. It's super clear. On one hand, what's banned? All those hereditary titles from the colonial days like Maharaja or Diwan, anything that created an artificial class of nobility, gone. On the other hand, what's allowed? Distinctions you earn through merit. Think military ranks like general or academic degrees like doctor. National awards like the bar at Rotnup are fine too, but, and this is a critical rule, you can't use them as a prefix or suffix to your name. This makes it super clear that they are a recognition of service, not some new kind of noble title.
So after all that, after looking at the big sweeping rules and all the specific, careful exceptions from Article 14 all the way to 18, we're left with this one big question. Is this constitutional promise of equality a finish line we've already crossed, or is it more like a guiding star for a journey that we as a society are still on? How you answer that? Well, that might just say everything about where we are today.